I am confident that you will not agree with the 5 years that I picked for Ole Miss
All right.
as the 5 most influential seasons in program history. Some you may not. And I don't know, maybe a couple of these will even surprise you. My first year is 1947. 1947 is when the modern era of Ole Miss football began. Harold Drew was the head coach, and he was ousted in favor of his line coach, a man by the name of Johnny Vaught. He had been a TCU All-American. He led Ole Miss to 23 winning records over the next 24 years and had them as a fixture in the national polls. That John Vaught era was, 6 SEC titles, 47, 54, 55, 60, 62, and 63. The 1947 season saw Charlie Connerly become the first Ole Miss player to get serious consideration to seriously contend for the Heisman Trophy. And, oh, by the way, that first year, Ole Miss went from 2-7 in 1946 to 9-2 and SEC champions in year one under Johnny Vaught. So 1947 is my first year. Now, this is the area where I think people will be like, wait, but. And I get it. I'm going 1960 as the second season. Second most influential season in Ole Miss history. That is the only commonly or universally recognized national championship in program history. Now, Ole Miss claims 3 national titles, 1959, 1960, 1962. What was it? 1959 was the Dunkel system. 62 was Ole Miss's only undefeated team, but they finished third in the AP poll. The 1960 team went 10-0-1, and they were awarded the Grantland Rice Trophy from the Football Writers Association of America. That was a recognized national championship. It wasn't one of these kind of – now, was it the same as an AP or a coaches poll national championship even at that time? No, probably a step below, but it was recognized. And college football writ large recognizes an FWAA championship from that year. So Minnesota was selected as the national champion for the AP and the coaches poll. So 1960 is my third one, 1990. Ole Miss in 1990 went 9-3. They had a chance to win the SEC. They played Memphis. They played Tennessee that year in Memphis. And with a win, I'm trying to remember, it would have been a trip to the Sugar Bowl.
Yes.
And Ole Miss dominated that game in basically every statistical category you could imagine. They did not, however, dominate the scoreboard. And so Ole Miss's consolation prize for that 1990 season was to play in the January 1st, 1991 Mazda Gator Bowl in Jacksonville, Florida, against the Michigan Wolverines. That game did not go particularly well. It was a little bit akin to playing TCU in the Peach Bowl in following the 2013 season in terms of results. Oh, my man Stan Sandroni, all these years later, I still remember him, and I've heard David Kellum tell this story so many times. David, I just looked up in the stands. They got Tuma players up there, bigger than our offensive linemen. Talking about the Michigan band. Michigan won that game 35-3. But that was Ole Miss's first New Year's Day bowl game since 1969. It had been 21 seasons since Ole Miss had been to a New Year's Day game. That was year 5 for Billy Brewer. And there had kind of been some up and down success. I think that one kind of turned Ole Miss's future. I get the last two when we come back. I've given you 3 of my 5 for Ole Miss. 1947, Johnny Vaught's first year, kind of the beginning of the modern era of Ole Miss football. 1960, the year that Ole Miss has its only universally recognized national championship. 1990, which was the first New Year's Day bowl game since 1969, coached by Billy Brewer. Here are my last 2. And, Borky, I struggled with this one. Because going back through game by game, it's easy to be like, what are you talking about? 2012 Ole Miss. That was Hugh Freeze's first season at Ole Miss. They were coming off of the disaster that was the final 2 years of Houston Nutt in Oxford, 4-8, 2-10. So they'd won 6 games total in the previous 2 years. They were winless in the SEC in the previous season. Ole Miss finished 5th in the West that year at 3-5 in league play. Started the year with a win over Central Arkansas, beat UTEP, gave up 66 and a home loss to Texas. They would avenge that a year later. They beat Tulane in the Dome, lost at Alabama, lost a heartbreaker to Johnny Manziel and Texas A&M in Oxford, then won 2 in a row in the league. They beat Auburn at home and won at Arkansas, and then lost 3 in a row. At Georgia, home against Vanderbilt. They lost that game 27-26. And then they lost a heartbreaker at LSU on CBS, 41-35, in which they gave up 21 fourth-quarter points. They closed out the regular season with a win over Mississippi State in the Egg Bowl, 41-24, to go 6-6 and get back to a bowl game. The BBVA Compass Bowl in Birmingham, where they beat Pittsburgh 38-17, finished 7-6. So the season itself, not so much influential. But that was the Ole Miss team that had to show some promise. They had to show that they were moving in the right direction to be able to pull off what they pulled off just a couple of months later, which was that 2013 recruiting class that included Laquan Treadwell and Robert Kimdichie and
Tony Connor.
Laramie Tunsil is the name you're looking for.
Laramie Tunsil was the other name that was in that class. I mean, it was unlike anything that had been seen surrounding Ole Miss football in a really, really long time. And it just sparked this era. Yes, I know it sparked a lot of things. I am well aware. But it was the beginning of Ole Miss showing that it could and believing that it could compete in the SEC and at a national level.
Yeah. And
2 seasons later, they were in a Peach Bowl, and the year after that, they were in and won a Sugar Bowl. Then it all came crashing down, but a story for another day.